Let's get chilly. We are the champions. Welcome back to Let's Chill, the official, unofficial UFA Championship podcast. I am Jeff.
I'm Jay.
And I am Kane.
And this is like the biggest episode we are probably ever going to record, because not only did the Wind Chill win it all in the UFA, but they did it for the first time ever. And they are the 2024 UFA champions. And it feels so good. It feels so good. We are here.
There's literally
yeah.
no words. I remember last year, like the bitter defeat and the overtime loss. And yeah, this year I don't even have an expression for it.
I mean, we paused the podcast last week because I texted the group, I texted you guys, and I was like, hey, let's do this right. Like we could just do our quick initial reactions on the podcast, but like let's give it some time here. And I'll tell you, in the last week, I have not really articulated my thoughts much better because I'm still maybe in shock and awe. I'm still going to be pretty rambly because I'm just so excited that they're champions, that they won it all. As we kind of start to collect our thoughts here and set the tone for the episode, Jay is coming back with some stall count trivia, I believe. So Jay, go ahead and share your screen. And we'll do our last stall count trivia of the season.
Heck yeah. Welcome to Stall Count for, I think, the last time of the season. All right. Leading off right away with question 1. How many different UFA teams, counting the Minnesota Wind Chill, have won a title? Is it 8, 9, 10, or 11? Definitely forgot I needed to read out the answers there. My bad.
Oh, good. So basically, it's almost a question of how many repeat teams have there been.
How many,
but
well, I know there's been at least 2 repeat teams I can think of off the top of my head, so I'm just gonna say 9.
I kind of wanted to say 9 also. So I'm going to say 8, so we're not sharing the answer. 8. There have been...
Nah, Jeff, you should have said 9.
What? Whatever. Is it 9? Yeah. Is that the answer?
It's 9. It's 9.
Ah, nice.
No, you should have said 9 because I would have been wrong.
No.
Whatever.
Yep, I believe it was San Jose Spiders repeated, and then the Empire have won 3 champions.
Who?
The Empire, New York.
Who? It doesn't matter that they won because the Minnesota Wind Chill won this year. So
okay.
It was a stupid joke. I don't know. I'm just
got it. Next question: who is, for the Minnesota Wind Chill, the season leader in plus minus? Was it DeClercq, Gordon Larson, Bevan, or Tristan Vanny Mortel?
Oh, I'm gonna say Bevan, like the perennial favorite.
I'm gonna say Gordon Larson.
Yeah, it's Bevan. I put this question there because it's always Bevan. You know what I mean?
It
like
always is.
It like dread it, run from it. Bevan arrives all the same.
Mm-hmm.
He is inevitable.
All right. This is a fun stat. Who is the season-long block leader? This is going based off of what like the UFA has on their website for the stats. So this might not count postseason, but I'm pretty sure it does. Is it Rader, Mattis, Noah Hansen, or Cam Lacey?
I wouldn't have put any of these people in my top 4, so I have no idea.
Noah Hansen.
If Kane say Noah Hansen, I'm gonna say Matt Rader.
Jeff, you got the second place. Kane, you got the third place. It was actually Brandon Mattis with 15 blocks this season.
Go.
Heck yeah. Wow.
Good guy.
Yeah, Brandon Mattis had one heck of a season.
How many blocks did he have?
15, I believe. I can I can double check that right now.
What?
That's awesome. Man, we got to get him on an interview.
Honestly, that sounds low to me.
Yeah, Brandon Mattis, 15 blocks.
Wow. Okay.
Mattis, if you're listening, we'd love to get you on the podcast sometime, talk about this season or something.
Yeah, no, maybe later this week or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Oh,
Um,
goofs.
this one's a fun one. Which one of these? So that the players excluded, but what is the highest total yards any player has this season for the wind chill? Is it 5,012, 4,982, 4,645, or 3,990?
How do you make up these fake numbers? Like, what do you do?
So all but one of these, um,
Is it like a
yeah.
phone number, like last four
So
digits phone number you have, or what?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you after. I'll tell you after.
All right, well, I'm gonna say it's 3,990 yards by Gordon
I'm going
Larson.
I'm going completely at the opposite. It's 50-12, the highest option.
Jeff, you are right. Can you tell me whose total yards that is?
Um, is it Bevon?
It is not Bevon.
Dang.
Actually, Bevon's total yards is less than any number on this list.
Dang.
Kane, do you have any guess for who has the most total yards this season?
I Gordon Larson makes sense because I feel like he's been doing a lot of cutting, but also he's a decent thrower.
It's actually Josh Klein.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Josh Klein. Gordon Larson was second. His number was 4,645. And then Will Brandt was 3,990. So I did just take other player stats. The 4,982, I just picked a random number.
Nice.
But yeah, thanks
Well,
for playing
let's
along with stall count.
let's say let's get into championship weekend. Hosting Salt Lake City this year. The four teams as we talked about were the Carolina Flyers, the DC Breeze, the Seattle Cascades, and of course Minnesota Wind Chill. Um, and the Wind Chill were slotted in as the fourth seed. They were the lowest seeded team, and according to basically everybody, they were the underdogs. Nobody expected them to win, and they were the team to come out on top. Um, just a quick recap because I know most people have talked about it, looked at it, probably watched the games live. But so Friday night they beat the DC Breeze 16-13. That was the first time they ever faced each other. So that was a really like exciting game. The DC Breeze were noted as like the best offense in the league, super efficient throwers. We all talked about how they really had to have good handler defense. Um, and we can get to this later in the episode too, but like crazy windy conditions took away the Breeze's like biggest strength and just let Windchill have that game, let them take control. And it was still 16-13, still a pretty tight game. And then the Carolina Flyers beat the Seattle Cascades. I didn't really pay attention to any of that game. So if you guys want to recap it, but I think what's more important is that the next day that set up the championship game. So the Minnesota Wind Chill took on the Carolina Flyers, and ended up beating them 17-16. It could have been of a lot bigger of a point gap, um, if it weren't for the second half of the game. Um, Initial thoughts, reactions. What are we feeling now that the Wind Chill are named the UFA champions?
I mean, other than the obvious, it just feels good to be able to say that they're champions.
Mhm.
I think it sort of proves and validates that not only is the wind chill like as a team competitive and able to, punch with the elites,
Mhm.
but I think it gives a little more credibility to the Central Division as a whole. And to me, just makes it more exciting for like the entire league because it's like really
Yeah,
anybody can win this. It's such a balanced league. So I think it's just really exciting for just the state of Frisbee and for the state of Minnesota.
heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, building off of that, I think another big part is like in those games, like you mentioned, Jeff, there was a lot of wind. And I think that something that was super underrated about Minnesota was they were like ready for it. A lot of people
Yeah.
have mentioned it, a lot of players mentioned it. They were like, "Yep, this is going to be windy conditions. This is not going to go our way. We just have to understand that." And honestly, the Breeze did not look like they were ready for the wind, and the Flyers in that first half the same way. And the wind died down in the second half, which I do think is why the Flyers were able to make such a sizable comeback,
Mhm.
um, along with some throwing errors from Minnesota. But
Yeah, I mean, it definitely validates Minnesota. And I'm gonna try not to reference my article too much. But I did write, I spent a lot of time and put a lot of heart into my article. So I will plug it because I'm very proud of this article. I did a season recap, which combined into a championship weekend recap, which just celebrated the Minnesota Wind Chill being champions. Go read it on Wind Chill Talk. But there, I talked about how all season long, and I think this was the downfall, not the downfall, but like where a lot of analysts, a lot of fans missed who didn't watch the wind chill closely. And again, not blaming them. I don't follow a lot of teams who aren't in my division. Um, but people who weren't familiar with the wind chill just aren't familiar with their ability to adapt. We talked about this all season long. And again, like go back every episode. What do we talk about? Oh, their red zone conversion percentage is down, but their hug percentage is up. They really weren't landing those deep shots, but like look at how many passes they completed overall and like had great red zone conversion. All season long, the wind chill adapted to the conditions, they adapted to their opponents, and they won games. Like, yeah, they lost games, but they won so many games in so many different ways. And that directly correlated, I think, to championship weekend and their success there. Um, and right, like it's not like the wind was only affecting the breeze and the flyers. Like the wind was going both ways. They were both really ugly games. Look at the turnovers, look at the completion percentage. Like it was ugly conditions, but the wind chill were able to capitalize on that and adapt how they needed to.
And I think a big part of that as well is like Minnesota played smarter in those conditions.
Mhm.
Like I talked about how the DC Breeze, like they really come in with these game plans, these sets that they're willing to run. I think Minnesota didn't have to do much to throw them off because the wind did. Minnesota
Mhm.
was like, all right, this is going to be a bad point. We're going to huck it all the way down the field. If we score, amazing. If we don't, they're going to burn 3 minutes getting down the field and we're already up 2 points. Like we
Right.
have the time. Like they had a game plan that was, we know when we need to score and when we don't. We know how to play this field, how to play these conditions. We know to force them to make mistakes. And both the Flyers and the Breeze weren't really doing that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think what to me stands out is that these are both elite teams, right? Like these are the two teams that were favorited for the weekend. Carolina was, I believe, favorited most of the season. DC was up there favorited for most of the season. And when I say favorited, I mean like respective in their divisions. And
Mhm.
but clearly a higher esteemed than Minnesota. And this isn't to like, take credit away from those teams, but I think it does certainly give more credit to Minnesota that hasn't been there.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing too. First of all, real quick, Jay was talking about field positioning. We won't repeat a lot of these conversations, but I know Ben Feldman was just on Pod Practice, the podcast, which you should go check out that episode because he was talking about how field positioning and strategy within the wind really helped. And I think he mentioned that too on other post game interviews and stuff. But like, I think that again was a direct lesson from the game against Pittsburgh that they lost at home. I mean, Cameron Brock, shout out to Cameron Brock, was talking about how like the Thunderbirds in that game, like those extremely windy conditions. He's like, well, yeah, but the wind didn't just stop magically when the Thunderbirds had the disc, but they played the field really well. And they found ways to move the disc strategically and stop the wind chill from doing so. And then to kind of Kane's point about talking about how these two teams, like the Flyers and the Breeze, were like the best teams basically in the league, favored throughout most of the season, lost to Minnesota, who was like the underdog, who people pretty much laughed off. And I think we talked about this, but like you don't have to be the best team to win the championship. And again, like all due respect to Minnesota, I don't think many people would say that they're the best team in the league this year, but they're the champions because they played the best when it mattered most. They adapted and fought with the best teams. And that's what the championship is about. That's what it should be. Is like, can you play your best ultimate when it matters the most? And also, they still belong in championship weekend. It's not like there was a fluke that they got there. They completely earned that position. They
Right.
earned that fourth spot at championship weekend, um, because they are one of the best teams still in the league. Not to say that they're the worst team either. So,
Yeah, I mean, definitely the best team in the Central Division this year.
oh yeah, yeah.
And I think one of the key reasons why there was such a good showing at championship weekend by the wind chill, one of the reasons why we were able to weather the wind so well was the MVP of championship weekend, Will Brandt. What a guy. I mean, not only is he able to control the field, he's able to do it in back-to-back games in adverse conditions
Hmm.
in potentially the highest stake games of his career. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at our last year's season recap episode to prepare for this one because in a little bit we're gonna get the player awards. And last year we did player awards and we had an offensive player of the year, and our unanimous decision was Will Brandt. And it's just kind of funny, like even then we like Will Brandt was good back then, but just like it feels like he's gotten even better somehow. That he's elevated his game and has made himself an MVP contender. And obviously, championship weekend, he was elected as the most valuable player. He was truly the most valuable player on the field for the wind chill and probably for either team. Like if he were on the other team, it would have been the same way. Because yes, like whenever he has the disc in his hands, like he knows what to do with it, and it's crazy. Like every throw he has an answer for whatever you throw at him, and that's what makes him so dangerous. Which is it's so cool to see.
No, like I
Yeah.
said, the wind. Oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna basically say like Will Brandt he's able to throw throws that other people can't in
Mhm.
positions where other people can't. And I think that's just what, you know, Will Brandt was throwing passes that other players weren't expecting him to throw because you shouldn't be able to throw those passes in those conditions, and he did. And it worked out. Like that's why he was, I think, the MVP that weekend.
I think the MVP award also speaks more now to his ability as a leader on the field that he's taken up this year, his ability as a commander, as a sort of quarterback one. Um, I think if we look at him last year, he definitely was the offensive player of the year. Like that makes sense, but he
Mhm.
wasn't the MVP. Whereas this year, I think that he took on that leadership role. He shouldered a lot more playmaking of responsibility
Yeah.
and he generated a lot more plays. He wasn't just performing, he was kind of guiding the system as well. So I think that was really cool to see him slot into that because we know he's been wanting to do that. And so it's clearly it's clearly paid off in his playing.
I definitely would love to get like a Will Brandt cam. Like I'd love to get inside his brain when he's on the field. And like, yeah, what does he see? What is he thinking? What are those gears in his head turning around? Because right, like he has his high release backhand and his high release flicks, like just like both high release throws he has are just like a thing of beauty where you just kind of have to stop and like laugh at it. Because it's just like, how do you defend that? How you're doing everything right as a handler, Mark, right now. Your handler defenders are doing a great job, but you're still guarding Will Brandt and you really just can't defend him. And like again, Will Brandt's not invincible, but he's kind of acting like he is. And until he starts bleeding, like he might be invincible, it's crazy to see what he could do. And yeah, like that leadership role is such a new, such a valuable component to his style of play that right, like you said, Kate, he alluded to in our interview last year. And like we're starting to see that kind of come to life. He is the building block for the team. He is the next court, the QB1. He's gonna be a perennial MVP favorite. And like again, I said this in my article, but I'm also trying to transition a little bit. Like he's leading this young cohort of I don't want to say rookies, but like this young cohort of players to countless more opportunities for wins and for championships. And it's not just Will Brandt. It's Gordon Larson. It's Noah Hansen. It's Thomas Shope. It's Leo Salvo Fernandez. Like the list goes on. There's such an exciting future for the wind chill. And we saw a lot of that come to life uh, over the weekend.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to kind of go on the agenda here and
Yeah,
mention some of the other names that were really stand out because there can only be one MVP, but
right.
obviously you win a game with a team and you win a championship with a whole system. And so there's definitely a lot of credit that needs to be handed out here. Uh few more notable names we got Josh Klein and Quinn Snyder, possibly one of the most like classic batteries on the wind chill team. I mean, there's that clip that was the Josh Klein nod and the big
Hmm.
flick downfield. Like that is one of those playmaking things that happens you can pretty much guarantee it every game, and it
Yeah,
generates a pretty consistently. We got Noah Hansen, who an incredible defensive showing again, championship weekend. I remember he had a couple of blocks. I don't want to just like run this guy. If you guys want to hop in at any point, add
no,
anything
you're
to these
good.
as well. He's really just again an incredible young player that has come up and is making an impact again at a championship level, which is awesome to see. And then Tristan Van der, who Jay, I believe he was your player to watch for the weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Or
No, that was Brandon Mattis for me.
okay. I think he might have been in my players to watch for this upcoming season then. Either way, he is one of the most consistent
Hmm.
and high functioning players on the team. The amount of passes and touches he gets per game, it's incredible. I think he gets a lot of slack because he has like a couple drops that were like pretty big. I remember last season or last championship weekend, he had one that everyone like pointed to. And it's like the recency bias when he makes a mistake really
Right.
overshadows how much he contributes to the team. And so championship weekend was another excellent display of that. Because I mean you can't like I said, you can't rely on just Will Brandt or just Josh Klein to get the disc down the field, right? We need
Right.
the full team effort, and Van Mortel is really good about moving that disc.
Yeah, I mean, and then also Bevon was on that list, but he's going to be on just about every list that we talk about.
I thought you were gonna
Whenever we
add
talk about,
something else to the Tristan Van and Martell part, so I was kind of waiting for you on that.
I,
But
well, I was gonna tag team Tristan Van Mortel and Noah Hansen. Just again, not to like have the numbers lead our discussion always, but like just to give you a context of like what they actually did in championship weekend. Tristan Van Mortel had 3 assists in both games. Three against DC, three against Carolina. He had 1 goal against DC, and he had 2 goals against Carolina. Um, which is just like, again, those are solid numbers. They're not like he didn't go off for like 10 assists and 8 goals. Like no one ever will. Um, but just being that solid, steady player, like you were saying, Kane, is so critical for a team for championship. Like again, someone you can rely on. Someone who's like, yep, get get him the disc. He's gonna know what to do with it. He's gonna be confident with it, which is key. He also did have 4 throwaways, but again, like everybody had probably 5 plus throwaways with the windy conditions. So we will make a big asterisk next to that. And then just again, real quick, Noah Hansen. Like again, part of the core, the young core coming up is also going to be centered around Noah Hansen. Noah Hansen coming from Carleton, like one of the best ultimate schools in Minnesota. He has such good experience already. And then again, championship weekend now is only adding to that, only adding to his resume. The last couple of games for Noah Hansen, actually all of his playoff games this year versus Madison, versus DC, and versus Carolina were pretty quiet. Like compared to the rest of the season, where he had a pretty solid season. Madison, he only had 1 block, and that's pretty much all he did in that game. Uh, versus DC, he had 1 goal, 1 block, and that was pretty much all he did that game. And then against Carolina, he had 4 goals. So like stepped up again, made an impact, 4 goals, and we haven't not even talked about this. Like the wind chill had a 4-0 lead to start the game. And they got 4 breaks in a row. They were so close, like a 5-1 or 6-1 lead. I mean, at one point, which is crazy. But like Noah Hansen was it seemed like he was in the end zone the whole game. And that's like coming off of a couple recent lulls, I guess you can call them. I don't really like to call them lulls, but not great, outstanding games in the playoffs. But like, he's right there still. He doesn't let recency bias affect him. Like, hey, I only had 1 goal, shucks, but like tomorrow I'm gonna come back and play again. Like he knows what it takes to win a championship. He knows what it takes to play elite ultimate. He may be young, but that doesn't mean he's inexperienced. That doesn't mean he's not ready to step up. Like he's been stepping up. And so those are the numbers. Those are the kinds of trends you look for. And so, yeah, shout out Noah Hansen, shout out Tristan Van Mortel.
shout out Bevon, Josh Kling, Quinn Snyder. Let's just list every single person on the roster
I was gonna
because
say 1 through
seriously,
20 and then
it
some.
is a full team effort. So Yeah, I
I
guess.
think there's almost like awards we could be giving out to some of these players, you know?
So we've got season awards here, player awards. Like I said, we did this last year too, which was a fun way to wrap up the season. Taking the whole season, shout out a couple players, and just celebrate the success. So we're gonna kick off our first player award, which is gonna be Rookie of the Year. We'll do Payne, Jay, and then me if you want to do Rookie of the Year. Or I I guess I don't care who goes first, but
I guess I'll go first and you'll end up expanding on mine. For rookie of the year, I chose Thomas Shope. Not only the youngest of the players, so the rookiest, if you will, but for someone who is so unexperienced in a league, and not just in this league, but like he's only played high school, he hasn't even played a college level team.
mhm.
It is incredible to see the impact and the amount of playtime he's had. So that's my rookie for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to go rookie of the year, Thomas Shope was up there, but I have to go to Leo Silva Fernandez. I think watching him play, I consistently forgot that he was a rookie, you
Mm.
know, and that's sort of like my indication that he's going to be a good player consistently. You know, he didn't look like a rookie. He didn't look out of place. He didn't look like he was like trying to make a name for himself or anything. And he was still putting up numbers. I mean, his plus minus on the season was 21. He had
Jeez.
14 goals and 14 assists and 2 blocks, only playing on defense for 2 points all season. So like he was getting the disc back on turns. He was playing, in getting the disc into the end zone, high throwing yard completions, high receiving yard completions. He was not playing like a rookie, and I think that's why he wins rookie of the year for me.
Heck yeah. Yeah, my rookie of the year, I definitely should have gone first, Kane. Sorry. Thomas Shope, for sure, by far. Again, we can put asterisks next to a lot of the playoff stats, but I'm not going to. Like in the regular season, Thomas Shope had 6 games. He played 6 games. He had 1 goal and 6 blocks, which are like fine numbers. They're pretty minimal. But in the playoffs, he also had 6 blocks, which means within 3 games, he had the same amount of blocks as he did all regular season. And again, a block when in windy conditions maybe is like counted for less, but still, when you're doing that against the Madison Radicals, when you're doing that against the DC Breeze and the Carolina Flyers, like those are big names, those are big teams to be matching up against, and to still be racking up those numbers, like he could have had 2 blocks, like crazy numbers. And I think for me, Thomas Schopp has this like clutch energy. There's this factor, this clutch factor about him that he brings, where these blocks seem to be momentum shifting. There's a lot of energy on the field surrounding Thomas Schopp that you can't really quantify. Um, but just watching him play, I'm like, oh my gosh, like whenever he made a play, like that was Thomas Schopp. I know that was Thomas Schopp. And then all of a sudden he's, spiking the disc or he's, dapping up his teammates. And I'm like, yeah, because he's so crazy on the field. And like Kane said, this is all without college experience. Like he's going to Carleton next year. That's high school experience. I cannot wait to see once he gets a little bit more competitive experience under his belt.
And
The
speaking of some more experience, let's talk about who gained the most experience
bro
this
tries to transition everything.
who improved the most this season.
All right, most improved. I'll go with this one. My most improved is Gordon Larson. Again, just comparing some stats from last year. Last year he played 6 games. This year he played 9, so he just had more experience. Last year he had 2 assists. This year he had 19 assists. Last year he had 2 goals. This year he had 25 goals. Uh, Last year 2 blocks. This year 4 blocks. Last year he had plus minus of 5. This year he had a plus minus of 28. Just insane. And again, only 3 more games. And just those numbers all just skyrocketed, which is crazy to me. Um, his playoff experience included 8 assists and 3 goals. And he on the team had the most receiving yards per game. So it means like people were looking for him deep. He was getting the disc in the end zone a lot. Like he had the most receiving yards per game because he's so consistent, so reliable. And this year, like again, even just comparing numbers to numbers, like way most improved. He improved so much, and I think he still has not reached his ceiling.
I think the player I chose, Noah Hansen, has a bit of a opposite of that token. He was given 8 more games this year. He played 2 last year and 10 this year. And he did not squander that opportunity. He had 11 blocks this year, 6 goals, 6 assists. I mean, we were talking, hyping him up just a little bit about how he did in championship weekend, always finding the end zone. Um, and just like always stepping up in big ways. And I just think, given that those opportunities, he showed that he is a player who belongs on a championship caliber team. And he went from someone who was barely getting any play time to someone who was making an impact in championship games. So even though
Mhm.
the numbers aren't improving like Gordon Larson's was, I think just him getting those opportunities and showing that he belongs there is that improvement. So I think Noah Hansen's our most improved player of the year.
Nice. That's fair.
It's kind of hard for me to choose a most improved because it felt like we took so much good foundation from last year and carried it into this year.
Yeah.
And I have kind of an unconventional one. I went with Jordan Taylor as my most improved. I not necessarily as a stats reason, although this year he did put up better numbers in completions, completion percentage. His plus minus was a full 5 higher. He has more goals, more points, all that fun stuff. But he also, I feel like, put himself into much more of a notable role this year, um, on offense and on defense. I think he contributed a lot to big plays, and so it's hard to say he's most improved because it makes me feel like he wasn't great last year. But I feel like this year his name was brought up a lot more in the
Mhm.
league, and that stands out to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's something tough, like not being able to quantify some of these like factors about these players. But yeah, like the clutch, the energy, the plays that they're actually making makes a difference. Like even if he had 5 goals less, but like the goals that he did have were clutch, like that's the improvement. Like that's key. So no, that's a good point. Most underrated. Jay, I'll let you kick this off, and then I'll go, and then King can go.
I think most underrated is Cameron Lacey. And
Okay.
I think a good part of this is that we didn't even talk about him in players that were like hype at championship weekend. Uh,
True.
we didn't even mention it. Like we are underrating him ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh, we always talk about Minnesota having some of the best pulls in the league, and last year we were just super hype on Sam Berglund. We were so sad that he was out with injury most of the year, and yet Minnesota pulls were still next to flawless, and that's because
Yep.
Cam Lacey was just pinning them in the back of the end zone throughout the regular season and throughout championship weekend. Not to mention, he's putting up great numbers with blocks, assists, just good defensive pressure, super athletic guy. And yeah, I think that we just don't talk about Cam Lacey nearly enough. And I think that's evident by earlier in this episode. And yeah, I think Cam Lacey is super underrated.
One thing I do want to point out about Ken Lacey is that I mean he could almost be a candidate for most improved as well. Again, maybe it's because the absence of Sam Berglund kind of forced Cam to step up a little bit. Um, but I was surprised last year to see he only had like 3 assists and a single goal. Like he really didn't contribute too much, and only 33 completions last year. Like, that's not significant compared to what I had expected. But this year he stepped up and had 10 assists, 5 goals, and 7 blocks. Um, right. So contributing in more ways than just his polls. And again in championship games and stuff like that where it matters even more. Yeah, you'll have to see that. I hope to see that trend line just like continue to grow exponentially.
Yeah, and I read a little note here that I think he would have been my most improved player, but his throwaway numbers was kind of high.
Mm.
Um, and that sort of brought down his overall plus minus. And that just
Yeah.
sort of like bringing down your plus minus like that with a lot of throwaways is sort of an issue. But other than that, like if he cleans up those throwaways, then
Yeah.
he's one of the best players on the team. Super
Makes
underrated.
sense. Yeah. My most underrated player for me is Tristan Van de Mortel. And again, maybe like this is not a underrated player. Maybe people have been giving him enough credit, but like I think Tristan Van de Mortel is, like I said earlier, such a solid, consistent player who brings more value to the game than we give him credit for. Like I'll read off his numbers again. Like in 11 games that he played this year, 26 assists, 6 goals, and 9 blocks. And he was the fourth player with the most throwing yards on the team this year, which like again is not a quiet season. Like that's so valuable to be throwing those that many assists and having that many throwing yards in the regular season and again in different ways in the red zone, looking deep, transition. Like I feel like Tristan Van Mortel can play anywhere. His skill set is everywhere, and that's what makes him so valuable. But yet, I don't think he's this player who's like, oh yeah, he's on the poster. He's the poster child of the wind chill. And in that sense, I think he's underrated. And again, in the playoffs too, 8 assists and 3 goals is definitely something that you can't ignore. You can't ignore.
Yeah, it feels like he touches the disc on every single point. It's crazy. So he's
Mhm.
on every O line, he's on every D line. I
Yeah.
don't get it. All right, so 2025 player to watch.
Wait, you're
Wait, wait,
underrated.
wait.
Oh, I forgot I didn't do my underrated player. My underrated player, so underrated that I even forgot to mention him, is Colin Big Juicy Berry.
Heck yeah.
He's probably my favorite player to watch on the windshield because he's lefty, and
Yeah.
backhands and flicks are more fun to watch, in my opinion. No, honestly though, he is a really key part to what has made this windshield offense more elite this season. I think he has stepped up a lot this year, and he doesn't get enough credit in the league as a whole or the windshield. So shout out Colin Berry.
Yeah,
And
not to mention, like we talk about the other two captains, like Madison Bevan a lot, but like
mhm,
we should talk about Colin Berry a lot as well because and we see him in those huddles, we see him hyping up the squad, we see him, talking about things they need to, changing their game plan, talking about things they need to execute well on the field. And I think that's a big part of why they do so well as well.
yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Captain Colin, like he's so passionate about the sport and about the team, and yeah, just yet another aspect that he brings to the game. All right, Ken, kick us off with 2025 player to watch. Player to watch for
All right.
2025.
Player to watch 2025. I'm choosing somebody who was actually not a player as much in 2024, Sam Berglund. He's come up
Hmm.
a couple times on this pod so far. Man, where did he go? I remember in 2023, Sam Berglund was a player that we were all pretty hyped about. He made a very strong impact on the team and in the league with his pulls and his just defensive power. This season he was out, I believe, with an ankle injury for the
Yep.
whole season. So it's going to be exciting to hopefully see him back in 2025 just to kind of see what he brings back to the team.
Yeah, I missed him. It was good to see him a little bit in championship weekend, but then I think he was out part of it too. So that's a good player to watch.
It was also always fun to just see him on the sidelines. I mean, he
Yeah.
just looks, yeah. He looks like he's always
He
having a blast even when he's not playing.
so he could be a coach. I could see it. Jay, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think my player to watch for next year is Thomas Shope. You guys had him as the rookie of the year.
Yeah.
But I think that this year he was a little bit he had that clutch factor. He was stepping up in big ways, but I think he needs to step up a little bit more. And I think going to Carleton, getting is that confirmed? He is going to Carleton.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So going to Carleton, a school within a fantastic ultimate team, hopefully playing for that team, getting more experience next year, he's going to be showing up in bigger ways.
True.
If he can stay healthy and stay on the team, he's going to be making a name for himself, not just on the wind chill, but definitely in the league if he's playing at the caliber he's playing this year and improving. So
Absolutely. I love that answer. I love that, especially as the rookie of the year for two of us, like to be the sophomore player of the year, if that's an award. Uh Definitely my favorite for next year. My player to watch in 2025 is, I think, an under the radar player, Matej Petrovic. We've talked about him a couple times on the pod. He's kind of been a lingering player on the sidelines, ready to kind of make a name for himself, but hasn't quite gotten that huge breakout season yet. Um, Give some background on this player. He played 2 games last year, played 8 games this year. Unfortunately, he didn't play a lot of big games this year. Um, the big numbers that he puts up are against like Detroit or Pittsburgh Thunderbirds. And it's just like, yeah, that's fine. That's good experience. But I think that he brings a spark on defense. There's so much untapped potential um, within Batier that I really want to see him step up, get an opportunity to continue to learn alongside Dylan DeClerc, learn along some of these other veterans, Colin Berry. Um, I think there's a lot of potential with Matej Petrovic. And again, like pairing him with Thomas Schopp, for example, on defense, I think he's going to be another like defensive threat once he gets an opportunity to play bigger games. We've seen how he can play against like Detroit, but let's put him against Madison in the playoffs. I think we can give him some trust. So watch out for him. And then finally we have our classic and our most valuable player for the team. This includes like postseason. I don't know if it makes a difference for our choices, but um, you guys have the same answer, so I'm gonna say mine first. I really was debating between Brian Vinoka or Gordon Larson. Um, I wanted to say Gordon, but I went with Bevon, which feels like it's a boring answer, but his numbers are just so good so often. Like again, he's leading the team in plus minus yet again, and it wasn't even really a hesitation for me when Jay asked that question on stall count. Like his vertical is insane. His assist, his goals are insane. He's getting so much better somehow as he gets older. He's a captain on the team. I don't know. I don't know. I can go on about Bevon. I'll wrap it up, but like Bevon easily is my MVP until he's not. Like basically just put me down for the next couple of years, I think.
No, it's definitely hard to count anyone but Bivon as like the
Yeah.
most valuable player because I mean numbers wise, yeah, obviously he puts up just ridiculous stats and he brings an X factor to every single game, every single point that I think defines the Minnesota wind chill like as a
Hmm.
franchise. So I think Bivon is like the perennial favorite for the MVP, but I
Yeah.
personally went with Gordon Larson. I think if you're looking back at one player from this season who really stands out game after game, Gordon Larson stands out. He puts up really good numbers on offense. And like we all said earlier, he stepped up from last year in some big ways too. So Gordon Larson
Hmm.
is my guy.
Yeah, before filming this, I was like, it's got to be Bevon, right? Like it has to be. Like I was totally on Jeff's boat, and I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
challenge myself. I'm gonna look over this roster. I'm gonna see like, is there anyone who I think could have been more valuable? And the only other person, no offense to the rest of this team, was Gordon Larson.
Mm.
And I was just thinking back to some plays throughout the season where Gordon Larson had possession saving catches, low catches,
Yeah.
momentum swinging scores, momentum swinging assists. Um, in he impacted games in big ways very frequently. It wasn't just like he's putting up big numbers, it's he's moving the disc well, he's saving possession, he's, being an impact on the field and he's impacting games in big ways. So while Bivon is definitely like putting up those numbers, always an MVP favorite, I think Gordon Larson is really that guy who was like this year he was the most valuable person to the team.
Like yeah. And I think, yeah, he along with Bevon, I think both of them exemplify like the attitude and the vibe of the team. Like I think they could both be. I think Bevon kind of is the poster child of the team, but like I could definitely see Gordon Larson being the next kid up. And just like that spark on the team, on the sidelines, on the field, wherever he is. Like I think being a representative of the team is a role that he could fill very comfortably. Just kind of knowing his personality and stuff. So yeah, that's good. I'm gonna share my screen here and we'll get going on mailbag. We had three mailbag responses this week. And again, thank you everybody for filling in responses. So our first question, continuing with the conversation, is who is the team's MVP? And we had three responses. So one was Cameron Lacey, that was a write-in. One was Gordon Larson, and one was Gordon Larson. This Gordon Larson was, or the purple one was a write-in. I think I did not put him in as an option at one point, and I did after the fact. So
Well,
we
no,
have two for Gordon Larson.
we got Gordon Larson and we got Gordon Larson. I
One
don't know
is
who
18 and
Gordon
one's
is.
18.5. Their jersey numbers.
Is Gordon Larson's evil twin.
It's evil Gordon Larson. He's 81 on his jersey. Yeah.
I play
And
for
then
But like
again,
upside down. No, it's an upside down
yeah,
81.
yeah. Wait.
Yep, that's the joke, Jeff.
Okay, my generic question was thoughts on the team's championship weekend. Someone said Ben Feldman, coach of the year. I'll read this off, then we can respond. Ben Feldman, coach of the year, question mark. Team built off the momentum of last year. Coach adjusted better than anyone. Wind can't be called a factor when both teams had to deal with it. And then finally they said it was incredible. We were able to be there in person. The fans were great and represented the passion we normally hear and feel at Seafoam. The host city did a nice job of, well, hosting. Other than the sound issue before the final game, everything went great. Winchell played a solid game, kept their heads in it when faced with adversity, and the coaching was amazing.
Yeah, I think coaching is like I shout out Ben Feldman. I know we'll give him a little bit of a shout out at the end here, but there's a whole back like what's it called? Backstage going on. And
Mhm.
well, Feldman's obviously like very front and center of that, like the whole coaching staff. So huge shout out to the coaching staff this championship weekend of this season.
Yeah, I know Max Longchamp has gotten a lot of credit, which I appreciate. Ben Feldman's done a great job kind of deferring to him as well. I mean, I think Ben is humble, but I think he also acknowledges like Max, and the rest of the team. I mean, Kelsey Percy, I'm sure, has played him. Carlos Lopez probably has been, whispered in their ears, but like the whole staff has made an impact learning from the mistakes. Again, I talked about in my article, we talked about in other podcasts, like each game, each week has been a lesson for this team. And that's why they won championship. Not because they were the best team, not because they were in the gym as much as they were or were throwing as many frisbees as they were, but because that they had that strategy, they had that direction, they had those lessons that the coaching staff was able to draw out and emphasize. Um,
And also some of the best timeouts in the entire league. I mean,
yes,
holy crap, Ben Feldman.
I, that's so spoiler alert, we are gonna get Brandon Mattis on the pod later this week at some point. That's one of my questions for Brandon Mattis. I want to hear his perspective on Ben Feldman's timeouts. Because other like Mattis did have that one timeout called against him where he didn't get the bookends in Pittsburgh, which I don't know if you remember that one. Um, so timing was impeccable there. But yeah, no, I mean Feldman just like that is a strategy. That is a good time. Like when do you call a timeout? When do you let your team play on? And coach of the year is, I mean, I could see it. Like maybe we're biased, maybe it's recency bias of winning a championship, but like Feldman, it has been I think an ongoing deserving recipient of that award. And then yes, we talked about too real quick. Wind can't be called a factor when both teams had to deal with it. Like we talked about that when the wind chill lost to Pittsburgh and wind was a factor. We couldn't be like, well, yeah, like it was windy, but like it was windy for Pittsburgh too. So
Although in that game, I don't know, the wind definitely did die down when Pittsburgh had the disc. I'm not trying to. I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding.
It's just like everyone on the sidelines just like blowing. Someone
Yeah,
had a
like really
fan that
big
they're just waving
industrial
really fast.
fans. Yeah, and they turn them on when the offense and then turn them off.
This one was fun. Way too early predictions for 2025. Someone said chill for sure if at TCO Final Four. They'll study films and will be hungry after tasting the victory. And someone said repeat, of course, but we won't be able to hide from anyone next year. That is kind of fun. I think like, I mean, they talked about this on the Pod Practice podcast too. I don't know if you guys listened to that. Um, but they talked about how like the Winchell were underdogs, they're under the radar. People kind of laugh them off. But next year it's like people still might not really believe us that we're still that good. Like, oh, it was windy, or oh, it was a fluke, or oh, it was a one-time thing. Like not that we're playing the martyr, not that we're like, oh wow, Winchell never gets any credit, but like it's again kind of like prove it to me, show me that you can do it again. So I don't know, man. We won't be able to hide from anyone next year. I do agree with that, but I think like people still might kind of put an asterisk next to us. I'm like, yeah, we'll have to worry. We'll worry about them when we get to them, but like it's not really a thought in our minds.
Also, that sort of upsets me a lot because it's like they almost went to the championship game in 2023. They
Yeah,
just dropped the ball disc
yeah,
in the end zone during the like overtime. Like if Salt Lake doesn't pull off a miracle and Minnesota doesn't completely fail in overtime, it's Minnesota versus New York in that game,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And then this year they win it all. Like when if and when they make it next year, like anyone who's brushing them off as a not serious team, they need to realize that that's a them issue.
Yeah, so they don't know ultimate at that point, but you know, and again, like we don't need to play them hard, or we don't need to be like, poor us. But yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a legit team. And it's a legit division, like
Hmm.
it is.
I guess my point was more people saying that like, oh, Minnesota was like a super big underdog this year. It just felt like, I mean, did you watch last season? Like, did you
No, and they
watch
didn't
that
watch
game?
this season either. That's the point. They didn't watch any games. They watched the marquee games this season, like
True, and we did
They
get blown
watched
out
the
against
game
New
against
York.
New York, saw us lose, and went, "Well, they suck."
right. Right.
Which, to be
So
fair, I would also do that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. This one we can I guess kind of address in the pod, but these are more for us. Like what do you want to see from Winchell Talk next season? Um, I'm gonna kind of skip over these, but I will plug like I want to send out a postseason survey. To please send us feedback. We'd love to hear more feedback from you. Like it's on the screen right now. You can definitely look at it. I'm not hiding this. We're not going to acknowledge it right now, but like um we want to get better because again, like we keep saying, this is for you. This is for our community that we're building. This isn't like we're not the experts. So please share your thoughts with us. We're going to send out a survey in the next couple of weeks. So we just kind of did a little teaser feedback here. Um, and then just like one other, any additional comments, questions, or takes you want us to address in the podcast. One was feedback, but someone said seriously, Gordon Larson is always wide open, which like yeah, I mean, I think Jay and Kane both definitely talked on that already. Like MVP, he's good and he's only going to get better.
I don't know who this Gordon Larson guy is,
All right,
but
all
he's so
right.
good at frisbee. He's-
I mean, yeah. So really quick before we get to our outro and our thank yous here, like I really hope that that championship weekend is hosted at TCO again next year. Like there's talk of like maybe it could be as recent as 2025. Um, I wrote about this in my article, and I'm gonna say it on the podcast. Like, man, I really regret missing championship weekend this year because they won. But I felt so much pride hearing the "Let's Go Chill" chants, seeing the signs, seeing these fans who we see, at Seafoam Stadium, and like I said, and Jay pointed out to me privately, like a lot of these fans have been here in Blaine since the team played in Blaine at National Sports Center. They've been here not just the last couple years, but they've been here since day one. And so even though I was sad to be watching that and be celebrating it in my own living room, like there was so much pride. That was so cool to see. And like the fans deserve that as much as the players do. Many of them do.
Yeah, I think I wish we could have been there. We all had some things come up. Um, no offense to the wind chill, some more important things that were happening in our lives. Um, but it was still fun to be able to watch it. And I remember like when that clock ticked down to zero,
Hmm.
like I was here with my fiance and like she's not a super big fan of any sports in general, but she loves coming to the Minnesota Wind Chill games.
Yeah.
She loves doing it. It's something that we always get to do together. Anytime I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go to the game, she's like, oh, cool. Like I ask if she wants to go, and she always wants to.
Hmm.
Um, and just it's cool to make like see her become a fan of the team as well. So she was sitting here and she got to watch it with me, and she got to watch it, and we got to celebrate together. So even though we weren't able to be there in person celebrating, it was nice to be like, look at this, like we're already growing as a sport in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, that's cool. Just like love to see that and just like kind of sitting in that for a little bit and just like reminiscing in that glory. So shout out to all the fans who could make it, like you guys represented, and shout out to all the fans who couldn't. Like, we know that you're still there. We know you're in the stands at home, and that doesn't take away from anything. So okay. I want to just move into kind of our outro here. A little bit maybe longer since that's our last episode of the season. Um, I just have a quick, list of thank yous because again, we have done this. We're the ones who are on the screen so much, but we have so many people who will help behind the scenes, who will help make Windchill Talk what it is. So first of all, photographers, all the photographers who take pictures of the wind chill. We try to give you as much credit as you can when the photography credit is available, but we really do appreciate, Megan White, Rich Mole. Um, those are the only Mitchell May, I believe. Those are the only names that are coming to mind right now. But like, we really appreciate the work that you do. You were taking amazing photos. We could not have our thumbnails without you. We wouldn't be able to have some of these article graphics without you. So really appreciate the photographers and just like capturing this sport that we love so much is so cool. And like that's incredible what you do. Um, Ben Feldman, of course, like Ben has supported this podcast since day one. Like he's been all in on us. He shared our clip, our intro at Seafoam Stadium before games this year, which is so cool to see. Um, so thanks, Ben. Thanks for answering all of our questions. Thanks for, shooting me a quick Slack and saying, hey, so and so is out, he's injured for the week or whatever, or, hooking us up to get, game tickets or giveaways. Like he helps with some of our giveaways sometimes. So thank you, Ben Feldman. To all the players, we really appreciate you like coming on our podcast, doing post game interviews. Like again, from the players' perspective, we are kind of randos. Like we don't have any affiliations with the team. We don't have college connections. We didn't play with any of these guys in high school, but we are just three random fans. So the players also have accepted us and kind of welcomed us in. It's like, yeah, cool. Here's this random podcast. Let's get interviewed. So we really appreciate you guys. And again, thank you for even doing stuff that we can talk about. Winning championships and even losing. We talk about losing a little bit. So Um, and then a couple others. Chill Boys. Chill Boys is our first official sponsor of Wind Chill Talk. Um, they're helping us keep our website up. They're helping us get some podcast equipment, all that stuff. And a selfish plug, like we're looking for more. We want to keep going with Strike Talk and make that its own individual website. I'm not going to be as transparent about like how much money we need, but like websites aren't just like cheap, like $30 that we could just do tonight. Um, so if you know anyone who wants to sponsor us, sponsor Strike Talk, anyone who wants to write for us, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get you on and join our team. Because again, this isn't just Windchill, this isn't just us. We want to support the strike as well, as they get into their 2025 season and hopefully make a run for their championship weekend again, bounce back. Um, I'll hit the next one, then we can all hit the last one. But R1P1 Co, of course, again, all the thumbnails, all the Zoom graphics, like they helped with this complete rebrand to open up the door for Strike Talk. Um, they saw so much potential in us. They believed in us. They reached out to us like, hey, let's do this together. Let's partner together. So thank you, Ziggy. Thank you, Tony, for believing in us. Thank you for making all this great artwork for us. We can't wait to see what next year brings. Yeah. You two take the last one because my mouth's getting dry.
Thank you, fans. Thank you listening or watching this. Hopefully listening and not just watching. Obviously, we are the ones who are like putting all the content out, but we don't do it just for ourselves. We really enjoy the interactive part of this. So thank you for everyone who submits questions to Mailbag. Thank you for people that are coming up to us at games and, just saying hi, cheering along with us in the stands. There's just so many different people who we've been able to reach with this that we would not have met before. And so literally every single interaction we have because of Windchill Talk, because of Strike Talk means a lot to us. So thank you guys.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who like interacts with us on any form of social media. Um, I don't know how Jeff and Kane feel, but anytime someone comments, anytime someone DMs us, anytime someone likes our story, responds to our story, um, I see that. Even if I'm at work, I will take a moment, I will go and look at it. I'll read the message, I'll see the likes, I'll look at the comments. And it's fun. It's fun to see all of you interact with us. Um, so thank you for doing that as well.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to know that people are interested in this, that people are reaching people. And again, like seeing those stands fill and get more crowded game after game, year after year. is exactly why we wanted to do this, and that was our goal. And so like that is so cool to see. And again, now that's translating into Salt Lake. And again, not like we're the ones doing this, we're driving this, and they were in Salt Lake because of us. But like I think like we're in this together. One more time, I'll say it. Like we're a community. We're doing this for you and with you. Um, and so yeah, keep reaching out to us, send in feedback, subscribe on our subscribe on YouTube and interact with us, get that algorithm up because that'll help. But then subscribe on our website too, because we have some goals to get subscribers on our website, which will help get sponsorships and all that stuff, and then it helps get stuff in your inbox and all that stuff. Like it matters. This stuff matters to us. So yeah, thank you all. Hopefully we get some off-season content. We already have, I guess, officially off-season content with the Brandon Mattis interview coming up. But hopefully we have some more player interviews this season, this off-season. Hopefully we can get to some, practice and stuff as next year comes around. But in the meantime, reach out to us with any ideas or feedback. And as always, stay chilly and ka-chow.
Stay
Good
chilly.
job.
Good
Stay
chow.
chilly.